Good morning all. In this video, I am going to discuss about the translation process. So on this translation, I will be discussing under the following headings. To start with, the definition of the process, then the requirements, then the actual process I will be describing in detail under the three headings: initiation, elongation, and termination. Followed by the process, it will be post-translational modifications. And finally, the clinical significance, where I will be discussing about the inhibitors of the process. So to start with, the definition of translation process. So translation in general, it means converting from one language to other language. So here also we are going to do the same thing. The nucleotide language will be converted to amino acid language. The process in which the nucleotide containing mRNA is converted to amino acid containing protein is called as translation or protein synthesis. For this protein synthesis, we need a lot of requirements. Okay, not only for molecular translation, even for the normal translation, we need few things. To start with, suppose let us assume that I'm going to translate an English novel into Telugu. For that, first I need the proper English novel which I am going to translate. Okay, so this acts as a template for the translation process. Next, you need an instrument or device to carry out this process. In the olden days, they were using pen and paper. Later on, they were using typewriting machine. And now we can either do it with our laptop or our computer. Okay, so this is the second requirement. Coming to the third requirement, in this system, in this laptop or whatever typewriting machine or computer, whatever you do, there you should need the appropriate font. Okay, suppose if you are going to convert into Telugu language, you need that Telugu language in that system. Okay, so the third requirement is the font of the language to which we are going to translate it. Okay, next, after that, though you may know both the languages, though you are good at both the languages, we may not get the exact equivalent word for certain English words in the Telugu. Okay, so where can I get those words? Yes, from the dictionary. Okay, so the next requirement is dictionary. And finally, we need few miscellaneous things like time, patience, etc., etc. Okay, so these are the materials required for normal translation. Even for our molecular translation, I need the same set of things. To start with, here the template is mRNA, which contains the coding sequences of the proteins. Okay, so here the coding sequence, the nucleotides will be, each 3 nucleotide will be considered as one codon, and that codon will code for the particular amino acid. Okay, so the mRNA, which contains the codons or the coding sequences, acts as the template for the translation process. Okay, so next, the instrument or the device or the machinery where the process takes place is ribosomes. These ribosomes are usually made up of 2 subunits. In prokaryotes, 50S and 30S joins together to form 70S ribosome, whereas in eukaryotes, it is for 60S and 40S, which joins together to form 80S ribosomes. Okay, so these ribosomes in turn are made up of each of these ribosomal unit in turn will be made up of a lot of proteins and rRNAs, which play a major role in protein synthesis. Okay, so among those rRNAs, the most important one is 28S rRNA in eukaryotes and 23S rRNA in prokaryotes. Okay, so which acts as a peptidyl transferase enzyme and helps in the peptide bond formation. Okay, so apart from these rRNAs and proteins, the ribosomes will also have 3 important sites: A site, P site, and E site. Okay, A stands for the site which binds the amino acyl tRNA. A for amino acyl tRNA binding site, P for peptidyl tRNA binding site, and E for empty tRNA binding site. Okay, so these are the 3 sites present in the ribosome. Okay, next, coming to the third requirement, the font of the language to which we are going to translate. Here we are going to translate it into protein, okay, which is made up of amino acids. So that is the font of the language to which we are going to translate. Okay, so these amino acids will be brought into the ribosomes, or will be brought to the factory for the synthetic process by a truck or a transporter called as transfer RNA. Okay, so we have almost more than 20 to 30 transfer RNAs, each specific for specific amino acid. Okay, so the process in which that amino acids are added to tRNA is called as activation of amino acid, or otherwise called as charging of tRNA. Okay, and this process is catalyzed by an enzyme called as amino acyl tRNA synthetase. Okay, so third requirement over. Next, the fourth requirement, dictionary. Okay, so I said that for each in nucleotide language, every word is a 3-letter word which is called as codon. Okay, so this codon, for each codon, what is the corresponding amino acid you will get from the dictionary called as genetic code. Okay, so normally we have almost 64 codons. Okay, out of the 64, 61 will code for amino acids, whereas the remaining 3 codes for the termination, okay, for stopping the process, which are nothing but UAG, UGA, and UAA. Okay, so these are the 3 stop codons or terminator codons. Okay, so like how the stop codon or the end codon is same for all the mRNA, in the same way, the initiator codon is also same for almost most of the mRNA. Okay, which is nothing but AUG. Okay, and which codes for methionine. Okay, so that's it about the genetic. And finally, we also need few miscellaneous things like factors and energy. Okay, so that's it about the materials required for translational process. Okay, whatever is there in the left side, that is just I told you for your, that just I explained you for your easy remembering. So just don't write those things in the exams. So just write these part in the exam. Okay, so the materials required are mRNA, ribosomes, amino acids with its tRNA, genetic code, and finally factors and energy. Okay, so now we will move on to the actual process, which I will be discussing under 3 different headings. So first, initiation, elongation, and termination. First, we will see about the initiation process. So in initiation process, we are bringing all the materials together so that the process can be started. It can be defined as, the initiation process can be defined as assembly of the first amino acid tRNA, that is the methionine tRNA and mRNA into the ribosomes. Okay, it is almost like packing something into the tiffin box. Here the tiffin box is ribosomes. Okay, so if you want to pack or load something into it, what you should do is first you should open the lid. Okay, so this is otherwise called as dissociation of ribosomes. Okay, after opening, you are putting the content one by one. First, we are assembling the methionine tRNA into it. Then we are putting the mRNA into it, and after putting all the thing, we are again closing it back, which is called as reassociation of ribosomes. Okay, so these are the 4 major steps involved in the initiation phase. Each one of these phases is favored or facilitated by a specific protein factors, which are called as eukaryotic initiation factors. For the first step, it is fed by factor 1 and 3. For the second step, it is done by factor 2. Next, third step, it is factor 4, and the last step is factor 5. Okay, so now we will see in detail how each one of these factors helps in carrying out these various steps involved in the initiation process. Okay, so first we'll start with the dissociation of ribosomes. Whenever there is a stimulus for protein synthesis, the ribosomes will automatically dissociate. The 80S ribosome of eukaryotes will dissociate to form 40S and 60S subunits. Okay, now after this dissociation, our factors, factor 1 and 3, which are involved in the first phase, which are involved in the first step, they will go and bind to the 40S ribosome and prevent the reassociation with the 60S subunit. Okay, so factor 1 and 3, they will not help in dissociation, but they will prevent the reassociation and keep the 2 things separate. Okay, 40S and 60S will be kept separated by our factor 1 and factor 3. Okay, so that's it about the first step. Next, what is the second step means? It is assembling methionine tRNA into the ribosome. Before that, first we should know how the methionine tRNA is synthesized. Okay, so for not only methionine tRNA, any amino acid tRNA is synthesized by an enzyme called as amino acyl tRNA synthetase. Amino acyl tRNA synthetase. Okay, so what this enzyme will do means, this enzyme along with AMP, which is released from ATP hydrolysis. So this enzyme will bind with AMP and amino acid to form an intermediate. Okay, that intermediate in turn will transfer the amino acid to the acceptor arm of tRNA. That means to the CCA nucleotide of at the 3' end, the amino acid will be transferred to form the corresponding amino acyl tRNA. Okay, so this process in which the amino acid is transferred to tRNA is called as activation of amino acid or charging of tRNA. Okay, so this is how the methionine tRNA will be transferred, okay, to its corresponding tRNA. Okay, so now we will see how this methionine tRNA is assembled into the ribosomes. First, what is the factor that plays a major role in the second step? It is in eukaryotic initiation factor 2. So this initiation factor 2, first it will bind with a GTP molecule to form a binary complex. Factor 2 will bind with GTP to form a binary complex. That means made up of 2 units. Okay. Next, this binary complex will bind with methionine tRNA to form ternary complex. That means made up of 3 subunits. Okay, so factor 2 and GTP, they will form binary complex. Then it will bind with the methionine tRNA to form the ternary complex. Okay, now this ternary complex will bind with the 40S ribosomes to form the 43S pre-initiation complex. Okay, thus assembling the methionine tRNA into the ribosomes. Okay, so this process which involves which leads to the formation of 43S pre-initiation complex, or which leads to the assembly of methionine tRNA into our ribosome, is called either as formation of 43S complex, or you can call this step as assembly of methionine tRNA into ribosomes. Okay, so now methionine tRNA we have loaded. Next, we have to load the mRNA. Okay, so how it is done means, here the factor which plays a key role is factor 4. Okay, specifically we call it as factor 4F. This factor 4F is made up of 2 arms. Okay, one is factor 4E and the other one is a complex made up of 4G, 4A. Okay, so these are like the 2 arms of factor 4F. Okay, so through one arm it will take the mRNA, it will capture the mRNA. Okay, through the other arm it takes the ribosome and they will put both the things together. Okay, so this is how mRNA will be assembled into the ribosome. Okay, so how it is done we will see in detail. First, the first arm, factor 4E, they will bind to the mRNA, they will identify and they will bind to the mRNA at the cap region. They will identify the cap and bind to the mRNA cap. Okay, after binding, they will recruit 2 other factors which are nothing but factor 4A and 4B. Okay, what is the role of this 4A and 4B means, with the help of ATP, by utilizing the energy released by ATP hydrolysis, it will prepare the structure of mRNA for the initiation process. Okay, so the factor 4E arm will bind to the mRNA cap, and with the help of 4A and 4B, it will prepare the structure of mRNA. Okay, now the other arm, 4G, 4A complex, through its 4G unit, they will bind the factor 3. They will bind the eukaryotic initiation factor 3. Okay, so where is this factor 3 located? It is already bound to 40S ribosome in the first step. Okay, so when it binds the factor 3, it will bring the ribosomes also, the 40S ribosome also towards it, leading to the incorporation of mRNA into the ribosomes. Okay, and this converts the 43S complex into 48S complex. When mRNA is bound to the attaches to 43S complex, it gets converted to 48S complex. Okay, so that's why this third step is also called as formation of 48S complex. Okay, so apart from this factor 4 and the mRNA cap, even poly A tail and its related protein will also help with this 48S complex formation. Okay, so in this 48S complex, initially the ribosome will get binds, but it will be found attached to the mRNA cap. Okay, so from the cap, the ribosomes will be slowly moving and it will be searching for the initiator codon, that means AUG codon. Okay, so usually this AUG codon or the initiator codon will be found within the Cossack sequence in eukaryotes and in Shine-Dalgarno sequence in prokaryotes. Okay, these are nothing but purine-rich sequences which gives the landmark for our initiator codon. Okay, in eukaryotes, this initiator codon will be found close to Cossack sequence, whereas in prokaryotes it will be found close to Shine-Dalgarno sequence. Okay, so once the ribosome finds the AUG codon, it will stop there. Okay, it will stop there and it will fix the anticodon arm of methionine tRNA against this codon and they will stop there. Okay, so first the mRNA, the ribosomes will bind the mRNA at the cap. From cap, it will be slowly searching for the AUG codon. Once it finds the AUG codon, it will fix the methionine tRNA against the AUG codon, and the ribosomes will stop there. Okay, so that's it about the third step in initiation process. Okay, so by now we have all incorporated the both methionine tRNA as well as mRNA. Okay, so now the next thing is closure or reassociation of ribosome, which is otherwise called as formation of ATS complex. Okay, so this piece is done helped by the factor 5. Okay, eukaryotic initiation factor 5. So this factor 5 has an intrinsic GTPase activity, which will hydrolyze the GTP to produce GDP. Okay, so this energy released, what it will do means it will blast away, it will explode away all the factors associated with the 48S complex. Okay, that means factor 1, factor 3, factor 4, all the factors. Okay, factor 1, 3, 2, 4, all the factors will be blasted away from the complex. Okay, so when it is blasted away, factor 1 and 3 will also be removed. Okay, so what is the function of this factor 1 and 3? It prevented the reassociation of 40S and 60S. So once that is removed, automatically they will reassociate to form the ATS complex. The initial ribosome will be formed, but now the methionine and mRNA had been packed into it. Okay, so now at the end of the initiation phase, this is how the methionine tRNA and mRNA is assembled into the ribosomes. Okay, so they are assembled in such a way that the 60S unit will close in such a way that the P site will occupy the methionine tRNA and the AUG codon. Okay, so this is how the ribosomes are assembled. The methionine tRNA and mRNA is assembled within the ribosome at the end of initiation phase. Okay, so now we will move on to the next phase, elongation phase. So this elongation phase involves 3 steps, which repeats in cycle and leads to the elongation of the polypeptide chain. So the 3 steps involved in this phase are: the first step is binding of amino acid tRNA at the A site. The second step is peptide bond formation, and the third step is translocation. Okay, so these 3 steps, they will result in addition of 1 amino acid. Okay, so now what will happen means the cycle will continue, and for every cycle, 1 by 1, the amino acid will be added and the polypeptide chain will be elongated. Okay, so this is the overview of elongation phase. Now we will see in detail about each one of the steps involved in the elongation phase. To start with, binding of amino acid tRNA at the A site. Okay, at the end of initiation phase, so this is how the ribosomes are assembled. Okay, the methionine tRNA and mRNA, this is how it is assembled within the ribosomes. Okay, so here the P site will occupy the methionine tRNA and the AUG codon, whereas the A site will occupy the next codon. Okay, suppose if this next codon is ACC, suppose let us assume that this next codon is ACC, which codes for threonine. Okay, so now what will happen means the tRNA which carries a threonine will come and bind at the A site. That is the first step in the elongation phase. Okay, so this binding of threonine tRNA at A site, okay, is also similar to binding of methionine tRNA into the ribosome. Okay, in the initiation phase, you might remember actually how it happened means initiation factor 2, eukaryotic initiation factor 2 bound with GTP to form binary complex. Then it bound with methionine tRNA to form ternary complex. Then the ternary complex entered into the ribosomes. Okay, similarly here also the same thing happens, but the difference is there it was the second step in initiation factor. So it was second step in initiation phase. So the factor was initiation factor 2, but here it is first step in elongation phase. So it is in elongation factor 1. Okay, so the elongation factor 1 will bind with GTP to form binary complex. This binary complex will bind with the new amino acid tRNA to form the ternary complex. Now this ternary complex, with the hydrolysis of GTP, with the energy produced from the GTP, it will bind to the A site at the appropriate codon. Okay, so this is the first step in binding of amino acid tRNA at. Okay, so once the amino acid has bound to A site, next the second step starts, which is nothing but peptide bond formation. Okay, so in this step what will happen means the amino acids which are present at P site, amino acid or amino acids which are present at P site will be transferred to the A site, resulting in peptide bond formation. Okay, so this transfer of amino acid from one side to other side is catalyzed by an enzyme called as peptidyl transferase, which is actually the enzyme activity is mainly provided by 23 srRNA in prokaryotes and 28 srRNA in eukaryotes. Got it? So what will happen in this reaction means usually the carboxyl end of the amino acid, present at P site will react with the amino end of the amino acid present at the A site to form the peptide bond formation. Okay, so once the peptide bond is formed, then it moves to the third step, which is nothing but translocation step. Okay, so in this translocation step, once the peptide bond is formed, the ribosomes will be pushed by a distance of 3 nucleotides in 5' to 3' direction. Okay, you can see here in this picture the entire ribosomal unit, only ribosomes. Okay, tRNA and mRNA will not move. Only the ribosomes will be pushed by a distance of 3 nucleotides in 5' to 3' direction. Okay, so this translocation or the movement is catalyzed by elongation factor 2 with the help of GTP, with the help of the energy released from the GTP hydrolysis. Okay, so when the ribosomes are moved by a distance of 3 nucleotides, what will happen means the E site, okay, it will go and occupy the tRNA, which is empty. Okay, the P site will move and occupy the tRNA, which is holding the peptide bond, whereas the A site will move and occupy the next codon, okay, next 3 nucleotide in the mRNA sequence. Okay, so the translocation leads to the movement of ribosome by a distance of 3 nucleotides. Okay, as a result, what happens? The E site occupies the peptidyl tRNA. Okay, E site will occupy E for empty. Okay, so E site will occupy the empty tRNA. P site will occupy the tRNA with peptide bond, and A site will occupy the new amino acid, so new codon. Okay, so now what will happen? From the empty side, the empty tRNA will be displaced and it will be removed, and again the cycle continues. Okay, so how the cycle will continue means, so here some codon will be there. Okay, so which will be coding for some amino acid. So that tRNA containing amino acid, the amino acid tRNA will next come and bind to the A site. That is the first step in the elongation phase. Okay, so after that first step, what will happen means, the amino acids from P site will be transferred to A site. You can see here the amino acids from P site will be transferred to A site, resulting in peptide bond formation. Okay, next again, once the peptide bond is formed, the ribosomes will be moved by a distance of 3 nucleotides, so that E site will occupy the empty tRNA, P site will occupy the tRNA with the peptide bond, and A site will occupy the new codon. Okay, so now one amino acid will be added. Okay, so again the cycle continues, and for every cycle one amino acid will be added and the polypeptide chain will be elongated. Okay, so this is how elongation phase proceeds. Okay, so how long this will proceed means till you get a stop codon at this A site, either UAA, UGA or UAG. Okay, if you get any one of these 3 codons in this A site, it leads to the process goes to the termination. Okay, so now let us see about the termination process. Okay, so when any one of the stop codons, UAA, UAG or UGA, okay, when it arrives at the A site, we don't have any corresponding tRNA for these 3 codons. So instead of a tRNA, a protein factor called as releasing factor 1 will come and bind at the A site. Okay, after this releasing factor binds, it will recruit 2 another things. One is releasing factor 3 and the other one is a GTP molecule. Okay, so RF1 will bind, then it will bring the RF3 and GTP. Now this releasing factor 3 will hydrolyze the GTP. The energy produced will blast away all the components of the translation process, resulting to the release of newly synthesized polypeptide chain. Okay, so this is how termination takes place and produces and releases the newly synthesized polypeptide chain. Okay, so that's it about the process involved in the synthesis of protein. Okay, this which I have been explaining under the 3 headings: initiation, elongation and termination. Okay, so before going into the next thing, we'll just discuss about the energetics and regulation part of the translation process. Okay, so coming to the energetics part, So we need energy for all the three phases: initiation, elongation, and termination. So first in initiation phase, the 4 steps involved in initiation phase are dissociation phase, dissociation of ribosomes, assembly of methionine tRNA, assembly of mRNA, and finally reassociation. Okay, in this, the dissociation is an automatic process, so it doesn't need any energy involvement. Okay, second, binding of methionine tRNA, assembly of methionine tRNA into the ribosome. Okay, so before assembling, first you should synthesize the methionine tRNA. Okay, not only for methionine tRNA, for any tRNA synthesis, it requires 2 high energy phosphates. Okay, so the enzyme which forms this as methionine tRNA is called as amino acid tRNA synthetase, which requires 2 high energy phosphates. Okay, next the third step is assembly of mRNA into the ribosomes. Okay, so for this 48S complex formation, to prepare the structure of cap, mRNA cap, we need 1 ATP. Okay, and finally for reassociation, 1 GTP is hydrolyzed. Okay, so in initiation phase, we are investing 4 ATPs, 4 high energy phosphates for the initiation phase. Okay, next coming to the elongation phase, the first step in elongation phase is binding of amino acid tRNA to A site. Okay, before that, first we should form the amino acid tRNA. So again, for forming an amino acid, for activating the amino acid and to form an amino acid tRNA, we invest 2 high energy phosphates. Okay, so once amino acid tRNA is formed, for that to come and bind at the A site, we utilize 1 GTP. Okay, then peptide bond formation doesn't involve any GTP, whereas translocation, it again involves consumes 1 GTP. Okay, so totally 4 high energy phosphates are needed for each cycle of elongation phase. Okay, that means for every amino acid added, you need 4 high energy phosphates within the elongation phase. Suppose if you are synthesizing an amino acid with 100 amino acids, it will undergo 99 cycles of elongation phase. Okay, that means you need 99 into 4 high energy phosphates just for carrying out the elongation phase. Okay, so that much high energy demanding process is our translation process. Okay, next coming to the releasing phase or termination phase, there we need 1 GTP for the termination process. Okay, so that's it about the energetics related to translation process. Next we'll move on to the regulation. So under regulation, we should always first mention about the rate limiting enzymes. Okay, so here the rate limiting proteins are eukaryotic initiation factor 2 and eukaryotic initiation factor 4E. Okay, so both the regulating steps are present in the initiation phase only. Okay, eukaryotic initiation factor 2 and eukaryotic initiation factor 4E. They are the 2 rate limiting steps in translation process. Okay, so just now we saw that translation is a highly energy demanding process. But whenever our body is in energy deprived state, that means either in starvation or in stress, it will activate a group of kinases, okay, which in turn will phosphorylate our eukaryotic initiation factor 2. Okay, so whenever there is our body is in stress or starvation, these kinases will be activated, and these kinases in turn will phosphorylate factor 2. Okay, our factor 2, initiation factor 2, is inactive in phosphorylated state. So once it becomes phosphorylated, the process will be inhibited and the initiation will be stalled and the entire process will be inhibited. Okay, so this is what happens in energy deprived state. On the other hand, when you are having good energy, when you are in a full fed state and you are having energy surplus phase, at that condition what will happen means insulin and various growth factors will be produced. Okay, so this insulin and growth factors will, through a specific pathway, it will activate a kinase and it leads to the phosphorylation of eukaryotic initiation factor 4E. Okay, so here also the factor 4E is phosphorylated, but what is the difference is it is active in the phosphorylated state. So what will happen? Initiation phase will be activated, the entire translation process will be activated, leading to the synthesis of polypeptide chain. Okay, so insulin and growth factors, apart from activating 4E directly, they will also inhibit 4E binding protein 1, which is actually inhibitor of 4E. Okay, so double negative will lead to inhibition of inhibition, leads to activation of factor 4E. Okay, so this is how the translation process is regulated in our body. Okay, so with this we are completing the process. Next we will move on to following the process. Next we will be moving on to post-translational modification. Okay, so by the end of translation, we are synthesizing the protein only as a linear primary structure, but these proteins will be active only in their native conformation. That means in a higher structure, as a higher structure. Okay, so the process which converts a primary structure into its corresponding higher structure is called as protein folding. Okay, so that is the one of the primary post-translational modification which most of the proteins will undergo. Okay, so most of the time this protein folding will be automated, and sometimes it may be assisted by a group of proteins called as chaperones. Okay, so that is the first post-translational modification. Other than protein folding, the other three major post-translational modifications are proteolytic cleavage, subunit aggregation, and finally covalent modification. Okay, so first I will explain you the proteolytic cleavage. For this I will take insulin as an example. Okay, so insulin, we all know that it is synthesized as a pre-pro hormone that is converted to pro hormone first by proteolytic cleavage. Few amino acids will be removed, and then it will be converted to proper insulin by the removal of C-peptide. Okay, so this removal of unwanted fat, unwanted amino acids to convert an inactive molecule to an active molecule is called as proteolytic cleavage. Okay, so other than insulin, few other proteins which undergoes this type of post-translational modification is clotting factors and digestive enzymes. Okay, next, subunit aggregation. This is mainly seen in proteins which are made up of more than one domains or subunits. Okay, the best example is hemoglobin and immunoglobulin. The gene for alpha chain synthesis and beta chain synthesis, they are present in different chromosomes. Okay, alpha chain synthesis is present in 16th chromosome, whereas beta chain synthesis is present in 11th chromosome. Okay, so what will happen means the synthesis will take place separately. Okay, alpha chain will be synthesized separately, beta chain will be synthesized separately, and finally they all will be aggregated together to form the mature hemoglobin molecule. Okay, so this process is called as subunit aggregation. Last thing, covalent modification, as the name says, where some group will be attached, either attached or detached through a covalent bond. Okay, so the most common examples for covalent modifications are gamma carboxylation, hydroxylation of proteins, phosphorylation, glycosylation, acetylation, and also prenylation. Okay, so these are some of the major covalent modifications. Okay, so now we will see some of the examples of the proteins which will undergo the various covalent modifications. For gamma carboxylation, it is mainly done for clotting factors with the help of vitamin K. Hydroxylation, which is a vitamin C dependent covalent modification, is seen in collagen for the hydroxylation of proline and lysine residues. Then phosphorylation, mainly for enzymes. Glycosylation for membrane proteins. Acetylation for histone, which helps in the regulation of gene expression. And finally, prenylation of a few proteins like RAS proteins. Okay, so that's it about the post-translational modifications. And finally, we will move on to the clinical significance, where we will be discussing about the inhibitors of the process. We have separate inhibitors for prokaryotic translation and eukaryotic translation. The inhibitors of prokaryotic translation, they are mainly used as antibiotics against various bacteria. Okay, so some of these antibiotics, they can be reversible inhibitors and some can be irreversible inhibitors. Those reversible inhibitors are called as bacteriostatic antibiotics, whereas the irreversible ones are called as bactericidal drugs. Okay, so now we will see the examples for each one of this category. First, the major examples for reversible bacteriostatic inhibitors of prokaryotes are tetracycline, chloramphenicol, and erythromycin and clindamycin. Okay, so how these acts means, first of all, tetracycline, they will all these four inhibitors, the reversible inhibitors, they will mainly inhibit the elongation phase of translation process. Okay, so the three steps. What is the first step means? Binding of amino acid tRNA. That will be inhibited by tetracycline drug. Okay, in prokaryotes, whereas in eukaryotes, the same step will be inhibited by a chemical called as puromycin. Okay, next, the second step, peptide bond formation, that will be inhibited by the drug called as chloramphenicol. Okay, this is in prokaryotes, whereas in eukaryotes, it will be inhibited by cycloheximide. Okay, next, the third step. What is the third step? Translocation. Okay, so that will be inhibited by erythromycin and clindamycin in prokaryotes, whereas it is inhibited by diphtheria toxin in eukaryotes. Okay, finally, the best example for irreversible inhibitor is streptomycin, which actually will inhibit the initiation process of the translation process. Okay, so that's it about the translation process. So before ending, I'll give you a quick summary or recap of the overall process. To start with, the major materials required for translation process are mRNA, ribosomes, amino acids with its tRNA, genetic code, and various factors and energy. These are the materials required for translation process. Okay, so next, the process in turn can be divided into 3 phases: initiation phase, elongation phase, and termination phase. Okay, in initiation phase, what we are doing is we are assembling all the requirements together. Okay, we are assembling methionine tRNA and mRNA into the ribosomes, which actually involves 4 different steps. The first step is dissociation of the ribosome. Second, assembly of methionine tRNA to form 43S complex. Second, third assembly of mRNA to form 48S complex. And finally, reassociation to form 80S complex. Okay, so these are the 4 steps involved in initiation phase. Okay, next, elongation phase. It involves the cycle of 3 steps. Okay, what are those 3 steps means? Binding of amino acid tRNA, then peptide bond formation, and third is translocation. Okay, so all these 3 steps results in the addition of 1 amino acid. Okay, so by the cycle of these repeated steps, it leads to elongation of the polypeptide chain, addition of amino acid 1 by 1, and the elongation of the polypeptide chain. Okay, finally termination phase. Okay, so when a UAA, UAG, or UGA codon, the stop codon or the terminator codon arrives at the A site, with the help of releasing factor 1 and 3 with the hydrolysis of GTP, it leads to the termination of the process. Okay, so after termination, usually most of the proteins will undergo post-translational modifications. The major post-translational modifications are protein folding, proteolytic cleavage, subunit aggregation, and finally covalent modification. Okay, so that's it about the translation process. Thank you. If you have any doubt, you can please put in the comment. I will try to explain clarify your doubts. Okay, thank you.